Good morning, guys. So my big plan today was to make some breakfast, have a coffee and sit down while this one was sleeping, but he decided to sleep for half an hour instead of an hour and a half in his morning nap, which he hasn't done in forever, so I don't know what's going on. He might be teething, but he's being a bit needy, and I'm trying to get him to encourage to do a little bit more independent play, because he doesn't play by himself that much, and I think it's important. So it's not going so well this morning. So instead of filming this in his morning nap, I'm gonna film it in his lunchtime nap. But today is all about house renovations, and I'm gonna take you through our house, and I'm gonna take you through the top 10 things that I wish we had done differently. I wish we hadn't made the mistake of. I wish we had known prior to house renovations, which we just never would have unless we had gone through it. So hopefully this might help some people who are going through house renovations or thinking about it in the near future. And yeah, these are our top 10 fails or mistakes, as it were, for when doing up our house. Alfie, what you doing? What you doing? Okay, and we are back in. Oh my gosh, that took so long today. I was meant to film this, as I said, when Alfie was down for his morning nap, which didn't go to plan. I realized I didn't even announce the video in my hello good morning bit. So I will announce what today's video is about, but it's now lunchtime, 1 o'clock. He's down for hopefully a good 2 hours sleep. So I figured I had enough time to shoot this video now, which is all about the house. So doing a house is by far one of the most stressful things, along with having a baby, getting married, although I feel like it tops it. I really do, especially if you're doing it as a total newbie like I was. There is just some things that I wish we had known before, and I sat down with Jack and said, right, if you had to pick the top 10 mistakes that we made and we are living with or / got rectified very last minute at our own expense, what would those be? Just realized you can hear my washing machine in the background. So I feel like we have genuinely come up with 10 points that will hopefully save you guys a bit of cash, save you a bit of stress, a bit of time, a bit of effort. And some of them are really simple, but they're kind of too simple that if you've never done a house before, you may not be able to think of them. You may not have thought of them. You may have thought of all these 10, in which case, well done you. You're definitely not as new to this as we are. Please don't forget to hit subscribe. I upload new videos every single Sunday. These mistakes, by the way, are to no fault of our contractors. Our contractors were amazing. That is actually one choice that we spent months deciding on who to go for, and they weren't the cheapest, but oh my gosh, is it worth paying that money? Actually, this is probably point 1. This is bonus point. Pay that little bit more to get somebody who is reliable and who is going to deliver on time and who knows their stuff, because they did know their stuff. Some of the mistakes in here are because perhaps we didn't take their advice, because we were saving money, and because we didn't know necessarily what to ask for. So anyway, hopefully this helps. Hopefully these 10 points from now are a good guideline, a good starting point, at the very least a good checkbox to say, yep, I've ticked that off and all done. My little notes here. So electrics. So first and foremost, when you're doing up a house, you're gonna have to pick how many plug sockets and where you want the plug sockets. That's really important. You need to make sure you think about lamps and all those things. But one side of that we didn't even factor in is we thought of electrics as your plug socket and your wiring above, your lamps, your lights above your head. I never thought about design aspects and saving aspects, such as having wall lights in the middle of a wall. So I never asked our contractors to drill holes and do electrical wiring and sockets to go up the walls. For example, these pictures here, I would have loved to have put 2 light hanging sort of design fixtures there, and in the smaller spare room we don't have a space for a proper bedside table, which means we don't have a space for a lamp either side. And what would have been really lovely is to be able to put 2 little wall lamps on there that they could just, that the wire could hang down and they could click on and off from there. But the house is made of concrete, and we only thought about it literally like the week we were meant to move in, and redoing all of that would have meant replastering all the walls, redrilling the concrete, repainting. So it was going to be a big expense and a lot of time to do that as well. So definitely think about, before you go in, where do you want your light fixtures, not just your plug sockets and your lights above you, but where would you want them on the walls? Are you going to have have a feature family photo wall that you want some light fixtures above? Are you going to have a bedside table that actually you don't want lamps but you want some really cool wall lights on there? So just think about your light fixtures prior, like that's got to be number one along with everything else. And now we move on to the laundry room. This is probably the most simple but annoying mistake that I've made in the house, which I beg you to not make. So a lot of people have a washer dryer or a separate washer dryer. Our washer, in which I'm about to take you in now, only had space because we wanted a second fridge for a single unit, and we brought over from our old house a washing machine. Yes, we will incorporate a washer dryer at some point, but we do have the washing machine pretty much going on all day long, so there isn't too much time for drying. But there are some things you can't put in the dryer because it makes them shrink or whatever the case may be, because they're delicate and you need somewhere to hang them up. And our biggest issue is that I love our laundry room, but it has no space to put a laundry line. So our laundry line lives either upstairs on our landing or in the spare room at the minute, which obviously then moves out and I guess goes in there. But it does just completely ruin the vibe of that room, and I wish I had seen, I'll try and put up a picture of this little apparatus thing, which I just think is the most brilliant idea for a laundry room in order to be able to dry stuff on a rack and then push them away. So let me show you my laundry room and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So if you have a washer dryer, which I'm sure a lot of people do, then maybe you only need a few racks of this. It would have been so good to have something here which enables us to just pull out the racks, hang up the clothes, and then push it back in. And I definitely would have either got a smaller fridge freezer instead of having a second one, which, by the way, this was also a mistake. Can you tell that we did not know it came out that little bit further? So we didn't actually make these cupboards deep enough. So there you go, there's another little mistake, but I'm not sure how common that is. That would have been really, really useful. This is a great little contraption actually for hanging up mops and all the rest of it to save some space. But the walkway here is just not big enough to put a big clothing rack and then also be able to open and navigate and walk through it. Think about that space where you're going to hang your clothes. This is more relevant to anyone joining me from Dubai, because obviously we don't tend to have a dryer in Dubai because it's so warm and it seems like a bit of a waste, but it is something we're probably going to have to get now because we didn't think about that in advance. Number 3, try out your paint colors. Put samples on the walls in each room. So we had a huge mistake. We had 17 drums of paint, which was enough to cover the whole house of a paint that I thought was this lovely white and would go perfectly. And as soon as I put it on the walls, when we were at like D-Day and everything was ordered and done, it looked far too yellow on our walls. So I had to order a whole new lot of paint, which was obviously far from ideal. And on the little swipe card, on the samples, looked all great, but when it was actually in situ, it just did not work. And actually one of the paint colors that we have on this wall down here, I didn't tidy up that side of the room. So that was also gonna go in one of the bedrooms upstairs, and went for it, bought the paint for it. As soon as it went in, it just looked just not the right color because the light in that room was totally different. So if you're doing any real feature walls for sure, but also just your base color for the house, is just whites are not created equal. So take your whites, paint them on a few different walls in the house and see how it works for the light in the house, because that is such a fundamental part of your house, you know, what color it is and what style you're going for and all the rest of it. So yeah, make sure you check out those paint colors well in advance and don't do my mistake of having 17 drums of paint that you cannot use. Right, I'm gonna have to get a bit active here. I'm gonna take you with me and show you where we messed up here. So number 4 is all about your kitchen island. Now, most of us love a kitchen island. We love the way it looks. It's just super sociable and wonderful. But there was one big mistake that we did, which we were able to rectify in the end, but was not ideal. So this is our kitchen island. And originally the plan was to have the island without this end corner bit. So the island was going to come here and we were going to have a lovely overhang of quartz to here where you could sit underneath. And it wasn't until my mum came to visit me in Dubai, and it was the day that we were getting the quartz placed on the kitchen island, that she looked at it and she was like, you don't have enough space to actually sit underneath it. And I think the rule of thumb is that you've got to have a minimum of 2 meters or a meter walkway. Ask whoever it is who's designing your kitchen what they recommend, but I think we have left a meter. You know what, let me just measure it. Okay, so we've got 90 centimeters. So maybe the standard is actually 70 or 80 centimeters. But anyway, check with whoever is designing your kitchen. Make sure you leave at least that in the walkway through to wherever you are going. But we only had accounted for a 20 centimeter overhang on the island here, which obviously if you try and sit comfortably under 20 centimeters, you are pretty much going to be covering up to like just the beginning, the top of your thighs, the middle of your thighs. So you're not going to be able to eat off there, you're not going to be able to comfortably sit around there. So thankfully my mum was here at the time the quartz was coming on, and she said, you know, that is way too short, and it's just something that we hadn't even clocked, and we had obviously paid for the quartz, we had designed the whole kitchen accordingly. So that is why we changed it to adding on this end panel, which ended up working really well, and we had to put a support pole underneath to make sure that, because this is one slab of quartz, it didn't crack in the middle. So anyway, it worked out really well, but just make sure that if you're doing an overhang for a kitchen, whichever side it is, whether it's on the end or to the side, make sure you've accounted for enough legroom to sit underneath. If I just measure from the end to, let's say, where the middle of the pole is, so where I can comfortably sit underneath, you're looking at about, that was 40 centimeters. So yeah, something around 40 centimeters for your overhang is a much better and safer amount, so you can sit comfortably. Okay, while we're here, I'm going to show you the other mistake, which was this beautiful wine rack next to the floor. So obviously with Alfie, who is now making everything his little playpen, it goes for this time and time again. And we had a 1-year-old come around the other day who was the son of a girlfriend of mine, and he just came straight to this, pulled out a bottle of red wine, and it just smashed everywhere. So this is why we now have all of the wines pushed totally to the back so that he can't reach with his hands. But I mean, that's not gonna last very long. And it obviously totally ruins really the aesthetic of the wine cupboard. So if you're gonna do a wine cabinet instead of a wine fridge, which was a cost saving thing for us, then move it higher or put some kind of cover on it in some capacity. But the other thing I wanted to quickly say on the wine rack is that we have, so we've got 5 by 6. We've got 30 slots for wine, but originally when it was proposed or spoken about with our kitchen designers, the previous ones that they had done were much bigger squares. So I made sure that I measured like the biggest wine bottle I had, the biggest champagne bottle I had, obviously not a Magnum, and made sure that the squares were as small as they could possibly be to fit in big wine bottles, so that we could fit in as much as possible, because I feel like there's not really much point having a wine rack if you can only fit 10 bottles in there total. I know, depends how much wine you drink, I guess. So make sure that your measurements for the wine rack are something generous so that you can actually fit a good amount of wine in there. And if you have a baby, just place it higher. That was a big mistake, and we can't change that unless we replace it with a wine fridge. Right, number 6. So this is actually one that I asked my mum about. She does a lot of property development back in the UK, and I just kind of said to her, what is one really common mistake that most people have in their house that they tend to make when doing up a house that you either need to go and fix, or they say is one of their real bugbears? And it was having the extractor fan too low over the hob. So she said a lot of people will place the extractor fan too low, and actually they'll find that when they go to cook, they will bash their forehead on the extractor fan. It isn't applicable to us because we have a downdraft hood, and I wanted that specifically because we don't have the capability here, or it wasn't an option for us to kind of do a concreted over extractor fan, which I think look beautiful. But I certainly didn't want an extractor fan on show in its classic sense. So that's why we did the downdraft hood, which I think looks really good and works really well. But if you are having an extractor fan, just a little tip, make sure that you put it high enough so that you're not bashing your head every single time you get to cook, because that is just not fun. Hear me out on this before you say, okay, yeah, of course everyone says that. Don't underestimate your budget. Not because costs spiral out of control, because they do, but not just because of that. But in underestimating our budget slightly, it meant that in a few areas, specifically for the AC for us, it meant that we had to cut corners, in the sense of like, we've got 7 AC units in this house, and at the time we only had the budget to complete 4 of them. And it was actually Jerry, my contractor's advice, to say it is one of the most common mistakes people make, that if you are doing a renovation in stages because of budgets or whatever the case may be, don't let the AC be the thing that you do in stages. Like, if you're going to replace your AC units, if you're going to redo the AC in any capacity, that is upstairs, that is in the roofs, that's plastering stuff down, that's ruining paint, that's taking down ceilings. It's a huge job, and not a job that you want to do when you have furniture in, when you have the house nicely painted. So make sure that you don't underestimate budget, so that for things like AC, it's not then going to mean you have to only do half of them at some point and then do half of them later down the line. Ask ask your contractors, say what is in the roof, what would ever need to be replaced upstairs, be it water heaters, piping, stuff like that, because just get that done prior so that you don't then go and ruin your house and rip it all up again a year later. I'm laughing at this next point because it's a bit of bone of contention between Jack and I. So when we first came to see this house, definitely the styling wasn't, you know, to our taste, and we knew that we wanted to redo the bathrooms fully and a new lick of paint and all the rest of it, maybe move a few walls here or there. The kitchen, I came in and it was a big kitchen, a very similar layout to what we have now, with a few real key changes that I think make it the space it is. But they had a black marble on the top, and the cabinets were all blue and kind of this engraved wood, which looked quite old-fashioned in my opinion. So I said to Jack, you know what, this is fine, I can work with this kitchen, Mum does this all the time at home, I can just replace the cabinets really cheaply, I can replace the top to a white quartz, and like, hey presto, a really quick kitchen makeover and we're good to go. It wasn't until I sat down with Galaxy Kitchens, which were our kitchen designers, when they said to me, if you are doing that, if you're replacing the cabinets and if you're replacing the quartz, you're like 75% of the way there in terms of redoing the entire kitchen, in terms of the cost of it all. That was a little bit of a blow, because then we had under budgeted for what the kitchen would cost, and we ended up doing a total kitchen renovation, because there were really key things such as the cabinets in the kitchen were, I would say, I don't know what that is, 5 inches, something like that, a good 5 inches down from the ceiling. So that's actually really common. I don't know why we did that in like before, but a lot of the cabinets in kitchens will be down from the ceiling. Not only does that mean you gather an extortionate amount of dust above the cabinets, but you also lose so much space on your workspace, between your workspace and your cabinets, and it just gives the kitchen a lot more cramped and dark and just not as light and airy feel. So we wanted to move the kitchen cabinets up, and whereas I thought that was a simple case of moving the existing cabinets up 5 inches, it obviously wasn't, because they were old, they were flimsy, it didn't quite work with the doors and the paneling that they had. So the mistake in that, what I'm trying to get to, is don't underestimate kind of what's involved in terms of remodeling a kitchen. Get all your costs beforehand. If you're going into a house that you're looking to buy and think, oh, I can work with this, just make sure you really know what it is you want to replace. Check out the quality of the oven, check out how big the fridge is, check out the hob, check out the electrical wiring. Such a simple thing as, you know, we've got a plug socket on the island, which wasn't there before, but I love to sit up on the island and do a lot of work during the day. It's a really nice sociable place to be, and that would have required, if they didn't have that and I wanted to keep the existing kitchen, that would have required electrical rewiring and all the rest of it. So make sure you understand exactly what it is about the kitchen that you want to change, and understand whether the cost of changing it slightly and doing like a revamp is actually 70 to 80 to 90% of the way of the cost of redoing the whole kitchen. I was not aware of that, and it meant A, our budget was too small, but not only that, we probably ended up buying a house which was slightly more expensive than we could have bought, because we bought a house that was kind of like okay to live in, when in actual fact we could have bought a total poo hole that had the most disgusting kitchen of life, because it didn't matter because I was ripping the whole thing out. Next up, bathroom windows. Okay, this perhaps sounds a bit silly and it was a total oversight from me, but we got the bathroom windows in our bathroom, in our master bathroom, replaced, and I didn't want them to be frosted because I said that I wanted as much light as possible in the bathroom, and it is the most annoying thing. I jump out the shower and I have to like run to this middle section in the bathroom where I know that the next door neighbor's window isn't not able to look in, and kind of stay there while I'm doing my moisturizing and all the rest of it, and then I can go out, get my clothes and come back in. So Everyone probably knows this except for me, but despite perhaps a non-frosted window allowing a little bit more light in, please make sure that you frost your windows if you have anybody looking onto them in the bathroom. It's really annoying, and yeah, it's probably something that I'm going to change in later down the line when we have completely done the house and have a bit more funds to go again with redoing it. So this is, I guess, a little bit of a general one, but probably the most important one that I could say today. And that is thinking about your house and how you will live in it and how you will use it in terms of its layout before you start. Okay, so a really simple example is those with a kid who have a pram. It is not reasonable that every single time you pop in and out of the house, you want to be folding up and unfolding and clearing out a pram every single time you come out with a baby. So have you planned to make a little space or a little area that you can pop the pram in, leaving it up? Because that is something that is going to affect your life day in, day out, and it's going to really get on your nerves. Yes, this is your home that you want to be proud of and you want it to look as beautiful as possible, and practical isn't really a word when we think about when we're designing our dream home, but that is what makes it a home that you love living in. So have you got space for a pram? And one of the other things that I think is really important is open shelving. So open shelving is obviously super in and it's very stylish, and my house is a myriad of open shelves, but A, with a baby, but B, just like because we're people and we store stuff, and even though I try and take out junk on a regular basis, like there's always things that you need to store, be it suitcases or games or folders or like just chargers, silly things that that do need a home but you don't want to be on show. Have you got a good enough balance between open shelving and cupboard space? And at the moment I would say we're definitely in balance towards open shelving. One of the things that we did at very last minute in the build, thankfully our contractors were on board, was that the kitchen had 2 entrances. So what we did is we shut off one of those entrances, kind of created what is going to be the back of a big storage cabinet, so that on the other side we could create this kind of built-in storage cabinet to just shove all of Alfie's stuff in. Because yes, I want this house to be beautiful and stylish and all the rest of it, but it does need to be practical for a baby as well. So just make sure you've got that one big storage room that you can shove in all your suitcases and all the things, and vacuums and games and all those things. Make sure you've got a nice balance between the two. And a few other points on kind of mapping out a house. So if you want chandeliers above you, if you're thinking, okay, I want a chandelier in my bedroom, or I want lights coming over the kitchen island, do you have enough ceiling space? So this is one of the things that my mum fortunately did tell me before we started the house, was that a lot of people make that mistake. They think, yep, I'll put a ceiling light here, ceiling light there. Make sure you get the ceiling reinforced so that it can hang a heavy light, should it be a heavy light. So practicality of the house, do you have a little space for a pram? Do you have storage? Have you got the lights in the right places? Have you got enough height on your ceilings? Have you got the electrical and the lights places mapped out? And then the other thing is plug sockets. So I went above and beyond with plug sockets because it is my fear. It's my pet hate, not fear. It's my pet hate to be sitting on a sofa or to be sitting next to a table and want to plug in your laptop or charge your phone or put in a lamp and not have a socket there. So we went a little bit extreme, to be honest, but you do need to think about, okay, where is my sofa going to be? Do I want a plug socket next to there? And make sure you do that so that you're not having to run extension cables like every which way of the house, which makes it look awfully messy and yeah, not as lovely and clean as I'm sure everyone wants their brand new home to be. Okay, last point, and I wasn't sure whether to include this or not because it is probably a little bit more specific to people living in Dubai, and I know you guys are from everywhere, but one of our biggest mistakes, probably our biggest mistake in the house, is that we didn't pay enough attention to the rustiness or the newness or the oldness, whatever you want to call it, of the pipes in the ceilings. So we had aircon units replaced, we had ceilings replaced, we had spotlights put in, we had new fans and everything you can imagine. And now when we turn on our taps, despite having it cleaned out, a new water tank, new water heater, new water filter and everything, our water in a few of the taps still runs like a little bit of a rusty color for about 2 seconds and then it goes to clean normal water. But that's not ideal on a house that we have spent, you know, a lot of love and money on, and we want it to be brand new and working perfectly. But replacing the pipes now would be in like a mammoth task. It would involve taking down all the ceilings, jigging about water heaters, and and all the rest of it. So we are a little bit gutted about that. Certainly something I would pay a lot more attention to when we do our next project, whatever that may be. So yeah, pay attention to your pipes. I don't know how applicable this is everywhere else in the world. Check they're not old, check they're not rusty. I guess maybe it happens more in Dubai because there's lots of sand coming through. I don't really know, but check your pipes. And that's it, short-ish but sweet, and hopefully will save you guys, as I said, some money, some time, some stress, or at the very least just give you some mental headspace and freedom to know that you've ticked off those boxes and you're not going to fall in a trap to any of those things that I've mentioned today. I know this is like a bit of a negative spin on doing up a house, so I'm thinking about doing a video on like the top 10 best tips for doing up a property, ways to save money, which we did with our wardrobes, and like, you know, just certain elements to put in which I feel have made this house really special. Silly stuff like how to create the most minimal wiring behind a TV, all things like that. So let me know if that's something you might want to see. Please do remember to give this video a big thumbs up and hit subscribe, and comment below if you have any specific video requests about house renovations, our house, your house, whatever the case may be. But obviously I'm going to be doing lots of mummy stuff as well. I can't believe he stayed asleep that whole way. I'm so happy. So thank you guys for tuning in, and I shall see you next week for another video.